You are listening now to the Spirituality Now podcast, the show that is solely focused on practical spirituality, leadership, and mindset skills with the aim and purpose of supporting you master your life. Welcome to the Spirituality Now podcast. Welcome to the Spirituality Now podcast. I am your host, Yvonne de la Flor. I'm super happy. I feel like a child that is about to go to a party and that wishes that the party was every day. Because number one, I'm attending today a training class, a teaching of a teacher I recently found out about. His name is Mado Moore, and he is, I believe, the most clear teacher person that shares about Zen. And this is the Rinzai Zen tradition. And I love his way of thinking, of speaking. Those of you who follow this podcast or me for a while, one of my mentors is Tim Grover, the mentor of Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. And he's all about mindset, like our guest today, which she's like I think she's a medical intuitive or the spiritual, voice of resilience, but more for that. But this teacher, Mado Moore, I've been like people binge of Netflix on Netflix. I have done that too, but I've been binging in his content for months now, his books, and I'm excited. That's one thing, just personal sharing. But the second one is my guest today. That it's the second time that she's on the podcast. We have had only very few people coming back because there is either an important thing to share or something important that is going on in humanity that matches their professional niche. And I think this is also why my beloved sister and an incredible leader, incredible speaker too, and the embodiment of resilience is back here in the podcast today, Miss Stacey Copas. And so we're going to dive deep. I want to share a little bit about her bio, but I want to, before I share her bio, because we have shared before, and we're going to link the previous episode of the podcast where we share even more extent her bio. I just want to welcome her and thank her for how resilient not only you are, Stacey, but also the message that resilience is so needed right now in the world. So welcome, my sister. And I'll share a little bit about your bio shortly. We're going to change the way the podcast usually is.
I love it. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be back again, and it's nice to be on video this time so we can see each other.
I know. Last time it was only in audio, so I love that. You are such a promoter and a supporter of our work too. So it's just an honor to have you here. So let me share a little bit of your bio. I just wanted people to hear your beautiful voice in the Australian accent that I love, instead of my Mexican English accent. But I love this, and I always like to say this about you: 7 times world surfing champion. I mean, can I see your face when I say that? For those of you watching on YouTube, surfing champion. I cannot even like stay in the waves. It's like I get distracted. The bird flew, and I was like trying to not get all the sun inside of my bathing suit. So 7 times world surfing champion Layne Beachley, right, dubbed her the Queen of Resilience. Of course. David Goggins, arguably the world's toughest man, calls her a badass. This is the first time I feel so nice to say badass in the show. I think second time because I think I said that. I love that David Goggins calls her a badass, calls you a badass. That's another level. That's a total lover, another level. So whatever you want to call her, Stacey is really the genuine embodiment of resilience. She was left quadriplegic and needing a wheelchair after a devastating accident when she was the age of 12. And this still touches my heart, Stacey, because I have a little boy that right now is 12, and I think of you. And I think both you and I have survived and thrived from very fatal, what should be fatal accidents, But here we are alive, kicking, creating good trouble in humanity, right? She did not let this tragic accident slow her down. Instead, she used her life experience and personal philosophies to work with organizations who want their people to be more engaged, mentally resilient, and productive so that they can grow through uncertainty and change that. Oh, dear Lord, don't we have that more than ever in the history of mankind right now? She's the author of How to Be Resilient and has been featured by Financial Review, ABC Radio, and The Australian, and hired by global organizations such as Viacom, GM, Holden, and Flight Center for her insights on resilience in the workplace. I mean, I'm just going to go back to this line that I want to say it out loud. David Goggins calls her, who is the toughest man on earth, calls her a badass. My beloved sister, badass, resilient queen, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. And the time when I met David and we were chatting for a while, and then he actually wrote in the book, he's like badass girl with like 4 exclamation marks. And I'm like, you know what? I am gonna claim that. And it's
Yes.
like, thank you.
I mean, I will put it, I think I will tattoo it like David Goggins said Yvonne was a badass. That's like in my dreams, right? But for you, like that's so cool. You know, we hear from people that have earned their right through sweat, blood, and tears, like you. I mean, claim it, claim it. And so, my sister, let's talk about, we're going to talk all about resilience. And I know we have the previous episode where you and I met, and now we're, I feel we're like, closer and closer, especially because we share a lot in common of resilience, of not letting an accident or a diagnosis stop us from serving humanity. And I find that very valuable, especially nowadays. But let's talk about the problems, the challenges that you see now about resilience in the world. And again, everyone that does not know, and we'll just touch base with her a little bit, her full story. We will link the first episode because it contains the accident that she had, incident, the moment she was diagnosed as quadriplegic that led her body, not her mind, on a wheelchair and so on. But let's start with the problems. What are the most poignant problems in humanity right now that are caused by the lack of resilience that you see?
Yeah, it's been an issue for quite a while, but the last 3 years have definitely highlighted where the lack of resilience has been. And to me, where I see the big lack of resilience is people getting very distracted from what's important to them. They're getting so caught up in, what's in the news. They're really getting caught up in there's obviously there's a lot of propaganda, there's a lot of stuff out there, and it's all designed to distract us. And people getting so obsessed with that and so fearful and focusing on that is a massive, massive issue. One of the other things that I'm seeing a lot, particularly with the younger generation, I keep hearing it, particularly with people that have either got children, teens, early 20s, the Gen Zs. They are finding that they've got an inability to cope with even the most minor of setback, disappointment. And there's this element of them just needing constant praise to even feel like, that they're worthy, or they're on track, or they're important. And so then there's an epidemic of depression and anxiety, and some of those things again were starting to be more of a problem pre-2020. But as soon as we got into like April 2020, like my prediction was the real pandemic was going to be mental health issues. Particularly when people got locked down, straight away I'm like, we're going to see pretty much it's going to be like PTSD after this. And so we've got this issue there where people then become disconnected from others. They become fearful of others. And, we're social creatures. We're not designed to be separate. And then we've now got where people are just being, things are very divisive. So yeah, there's always something that you're meant to, be for or against. And I don't think that that's ever been more prevalent than it is now. So I'm seeing people that just, have the inability to deal with even just really minor inconveniences. And the other thing I'm seeing too is people are very quick to label an experience as anxiety or depression or any of those type of things. With I don't think they really have the ability to distinguish between what's a moment of sadness and what is depression, and what's a moment of being a little bit apprehensive, and then what is anxiety. So I'm seeing a lot of those things that are happening at the moment. And it's just the inability to actually be able to even step outside of a comfort zone even more. People have become so withdrawn and within to themselves, and just don't even, a lot of people just don't even try. And I guess, and then the byproduct of a lot of this sort of stuff has been a real outbreak of the entitlement mentality,
Yeah.
where it's like it's always I just need to get without contributing in any way. So much consumerism where there's everyone's taking and consuming, but there's not that many people anymore that are actually creating and connecting and adding value and contributing. So it's such an interesting space, but so much of it highlights that the lack of resilience.
Yeah. Wow. This is so powerful. So I wanted to start with the problem. I usually start with the why and everything because these are real, genuine problems that we have, and I see it. I see like people are like, you don't answer immediately. You are ghosting me. You put everything. You know what happened? I want to tell you. Really good teacher, right? A good teacher, so spiritual teacher, etc., etc. I sent him a message or something like that, and I'm on a car sending a message, and a little letter comes into the text. It's like I said, "Hi, Stacy." A typo by the movement. I think I was dictating to Syrian with my accent. I mean, the dictations are hilarious and sometimes scary. It's like I didn't say that. I said something else. But a little letter Z came like, hello, how are you? Nice to meet you. And a letter C. The response I got is like, I am a pacifist. I am not into this brutality. Like Russia puts a C in there. I had no clue that a letter C, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, the letter C was going to trigger and detonate so much fear. And probably considering me as if I was a terrorist for writing the effing letter Z, and so I see those little details. I see these triggers. I see the amount, of people thinking you are being rude, you are ghosting me. What you said here, which is the inability to cope with disappointment, it is, I think, is growing. And so let's go to a little bit of your story. When you were 12, you were a happy girl, you were a radiant girl, and suddenly this, let's put it in quotes. I know you don't take it like that, like myself. I don't take what happened in my body and everything of the accident. We don't take it as tragedy, but let's use the word tragedy so people can get the memo, right? And the feeling in their body of what you have gone through in order to earn the right to come to me and tell me, hey, the young generation is unable to cope with many disappointments, and that's growing. The increase of fear is growing for 3 years, right? There's an epidemic of depression and anxiety, and there's a confusion too. Now, I feel bad, and if I feel bad, it's like I'm fully depressed. No, maybe you feel bad. You know, I'm in anxiety. No, maybe you're just sad, as you said. So, share a little bit about your story as short or as long as you want. Is your podcast of when you were 12 that marks the truly the call of your soul for this incredible journey of resilience in the world.
Yes. So yeah, 12 years old, I was an athlete at the time. So I was the first girl. There was a friend and I, we ended up being the first girls to ever play soccer for our school. This was in like 1989, so I'm showing my age now. And so in 1989, and then I was the pitcher in the softball team in the summer. I was a representative runner from every distance from the 100 meters right through to the cross country. So I was obsessed with running. So I was good at sports and I was immersed in sports. And all I wanted to do from the time I was, even before I started school, I knew all I wanted to do was be a vet. So, and then at 12 years old, I was just at the end of my primary school here in Australia, and I'd actually passed entrance exams, and I'd been offered a place in an academically competitive agricultural secondary school. So all on track. I had, good friends, normal family, all those type of things. And then, it was a hot summer afternoon, Sunday afternoon, and I was cooling off in a backyard swimming pool with my younger brother who was 10 and a couple of boys around the same age. As I did every time I visited this, it was a relative's place, I just kept climbing up on the edge of the pool and diving in. And I was getting yelled at to stop, but I'm sure we all remember what it was like to be 12 and bulletproof and invincible. And so I completely ignored that. But this one particular time I was standing there and I was being very self-critical of my diving. And I thought that I was splashing too much as I was diving in. So I stood there for a moment and I thought, what could I do to make a perfect dive? And so I thought, if I was to hold my feet together, keep my legs straight, I thought in theory that would make a cleaner entry into the water. So I took a deep breath and I did exactly that. And it felt like any other dive that I'd done before until I went to try and swim up to the surface of the water. And then I realized I couldn't move. So here I was at the bottom of the pool, completely conscious. I didn't feel any pain. It didn't feel like anything had gone wrong. Holding my breath. Obviously, panic set in very quickly when I realized I couldn't move and I was stuck, desperately like trying to get the attention of my brother or one of the others, which I couldn't do. I could not move. So I held my breath for as long as I could. But then when I couldn't hold it any longer, I had to give in. And in that moment, that panic turned into a moment of just pure terror as I breathed in and my lungs filled with water. And then instantly I blacked out. And eventually they realized that something was wrong. They just thought I was mucking around. And look, they're kids. You can't blame them for that. And so eventually they realized when I didn't come up that something was wrong and they raised the alarm for help. And it was later that night at the third hospital that I was taken to. I was taken from hospital to hospital. And at the third hospital in the ICU, I had a doctor tell me that I'd actually broken my neck and drowned and that I'd never walk again. So from being that, fiercely independent, active, driven young woman to then being told that I could never do those things again, I couldn't even walk, let alone do the things that I loved so much. That felt like a death sentence to me in that moment.
Wow.
And it was, like it's all over.
Yes, yes, yeah. Obviously, and you were 12. For me, that's such an initiation age for women and a transition from a young girl into adolescence. And I get dizzy. I get for some reason with these type of stories. And I remember when I had my car incident or accident, and there's a shift of perspective. There's an energetic thing. There's a coming to well, I me when my arm was cut off my body. I came to immediately to there was no thought about I'm going to keep it. I kept it by a miracle. I cannot move it, but I kept it by a miracle. But how was how was I've never asked you, but how was your brother in this? Did he, because the impact of the people that loved us, that go through this with us, sometimes is not spoken about. I know my father suffered a lot. My mother had to take care of me with multiple sclerosis that she couldn't. So it was, that pains my heart. So how was it for your parents and for your brother, love?
It was really interesting because I'd never actually considered it until I started speaking and people started asking that question. And then I had that element of guilt that kicked in to go, do you know what? I have no idea.
Oh,
I have no
okay.
idea. I come from a family that don't talk about anything,
Mm.
nothing. It's just, go through the motions day to day, day to day. My parents stayed together, so that was one thing that was, they fought the statistics on that one, because
Yeah,
generally when something like this happens, it's at least 80% of marriages break down.
yes.
So they stayed together, and then yes, like this year they've been together for 47 years.
Wow.
So that's a good thing. But with my brother, no one really talked about it. And he and I never talked about it. My parents never talked about it. I was actually living with my parents at the time, a few years ago, when it was the 30th anniversary of the injury. And it was interesting because the day before I was asking my mum, have you got any photos like from around then? And she goes, oh, what do you want them for? And I said, tomorrow's um, the 30th anniversary. She goes, oh, okay. And then the day came and no one even talked about it. Like I started sharing a series of stories
Yes.
day to day about different reflections on my 30 years since I had the injury. No one ever spoke about it. It was the weirdest thing.
But I love that. I love that we're speaking about that. I just want to honor the people that go through this with us, and we feel guilty. We go through all these different emotions, but I think this is part of, all of us go through things, and this also, not talking about it or talking about it. Kudos to your parents that stayed together. Kudos to your brother, whatever he went through, and you are an element for this family of resilience. But how did you summon the force to choose to rise up is unbelievable to me, Stacey. What kept you walking even though you were going to be in a wheelchair? It's like what kept me moving an arm even though I cannot move an arm, or and I was not going to walk too, and I have a lot of challenges with my legs nowadays because of that. But what kept you going? What was in your mind that said, Stacey, you must go on?
Initially, there was, when I first was told, there was that little bit of, no, I'll prove you wrong. There was that, but it wasn't something that was a lasting thing. After you've been in hospital for so long, like I spent the first 8 weeks flat on my back staring at a ceiling. Like, and this was, we didn't have Netflix or Audible or any of those things back then. It was free to air TV and 5 channels, and I watched a TV using a mirror. And but the funny thing is, I laugh about it now, but I can read backwards now because of Wheel of Fortune. It's just because I watch TV using a mirror. Um, but I really I went within myself a lot, and but for the first few years I didn't want to be around at all. I just sort of thought, look, I couldn't do things the way I used to, and I felt like I could never be good at something again. And being a 12-year-old girl, one of the biggest things that was really, I stewed over a lot was I thought boys would never be interested in me again.
Yes, and Stacey, maybe one day you and I, I'll invite you and we'll do a speech about that of self-confidence and loving the body of the women because you and I defy that. You've had boyfriends, you have a partner right now. I broke up with mine, my old one, which is, but dating, of course. And I have all these injuries. I cannot move an arm and everything. So what do, what do you have to say about that? And then we'll go back to the resilience aspect.
Yeah. Well, it's
Stacey,
interesting. And I've been married. I've had, a few long-term relationships over my time. But it came down to I didn't focus on, geez, I'm in a wheelchair, poor me. And I
that's right.
never presented that way. I never led with that. It's just like, here I am, and this just happens to be part of my life. I don't
Stacey,
focus on it.
I love you. This Zen teacher that I just met that I keep sharing about him now because I'm fascinated about the clarity this man has. And very practical, very simple. And those of you who don't know Zen, there's nothing fluffy. It's such hard work in the body. But he says that, you just said it. He said, you didn't focus, you didn't make it like a situational thing, like oh, for me. It's a condition. Hey, this is who I am. I have like, my eyes are green. I can't move an arm. My leg is crooked. Are they this? It's a condition. It's not I love this, because I think you sharing this is going to give a lot of hope to women out there that are not wanting even to go out because they are afraid that their makeup didn't look good. And I'm not trying to mock, I'm feeling compassion, but there's this situational awareness and condition awareness that needs to be brought into the menu of resilience. So I'm so proud for you. You're so gorgeous, and you know what? That even though you have sent those pictures of you, I can never see the wheelchair. Okay, isn't
Yeah.
that weird? Like
And
people
so
tell me, I have got to explain, my arm, I cannot move it for certain things. It's like, what? They have no clue. Even though I said it, I share it, nothing.
no, people don't notice. Again, it comes down to what we give attention to, and also internally what's going on in our minds. Because one of the things I realized, it must be about 15 years ago, um, it's, if you don't want people to feel sorry for you, stop feeling sorry for yourself.
Boom. Boom. If you don't want to feel, oh my God, that we're going to highlight that. That's
Yeah.
true.
It's
It's
so
so,
big because again, we attract what's going on in here. Because I used to hate it so much. I get all these people that come up and go, "Oh, you poor thing. I'm so sorry. What happened?" On the old people that would pat me on the head, like those type of things. And I used to, but I'd sort of see it coming, and I would like, don't come near me, don't come like that way. And of course, then you attract it. Once
uh,
I started to sit taller, look people straight in the eye, smile, say hi, make eye contact, the chair becomes insignificant. I have so many people that I know, that people that I've worked with over the years, friends and things like that. They'll organize something and sometimes they'll forget to check something about accessibility and they go, "Oh my gosh, we just keep forgetting. We just forget that about the chair. It's just, you are who you are." And I don't make a big deal about it. It just happens to be something that's there. And even when I started dating again after I got divorced, and there was this, I had this thing: do I put the pictures in my profile of me like showing the wheelchair? And at first I thought no, because I didn't want people to, to write me off. And then I thought, you know what? I've worked so hard to get to this point in my life where
yeah.
I'm so connected with who I am. I love who I am. Even though there's all these challenges, I've learned to love them and be grateful for them and appreciate them. And I'm
Wow.
like, why would then I not be my whole self in those pictures? And I thought one of two things could happen. A man could look at that and go, "Oh, not going to go, like, wheelchair problem. No, that's that." Or you could get some of the weirdos that have a thing for that. And I'm like, I sort of feel that my radar is pretty finely tuned for that. And do you know what? In all of the conversations I had over the years, with dating and everything like that, I had no trouble. I had date after date after date after date. Like, I started feeling like Drew Barrymore in 50 First Dates.
Yes.
And because I had so many dates, but I was just myself and I was present. And you know what? Probably so let's say out of every 50 men that I connected with and had a, messaging, there would be one that would ask a question about the chair. That was it. It was
Wow.
it.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. I mean, you lead us into relationships, Stacey. I will take the training with you because this is so powerful. You just said, this reminds me. I have a Zen teacher here in Las Vegas that gives you koans. A koan is I'm not even going to even try to define it, but they give you this like unsolvable problem. But one of the situations with koans is that you become the koan. You breed the koan until and I think, like, I see it like the wheelchair right now. It's like a koan. It's like it's part of this, and it actually, it makes it more powerful even. So anyways, back, yeah, I got too enamored with the dating and all of that right now that I'm in the game of that. But anyway, so Stacy, so we spoke about all of these problems. And so when you help people reclaim, I love that you said, I'm going to take ownership, of David Goggins calling you a badass, but how important it is for people to own who they are, and what can they do? What is the beginning process to really build a resilient mind a resilient body, because I've seen you, you keep training. I mean, when I'm like, oh, I'm complaining about my pain, my leg, and I see your pictures and you are in the gym and you have a weight, I'm like, oh, shut up, Yvonne. Go and do the work, right? But what can they do? Why is it important for them to own everything they are and from there build the mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual resilience? I know the question is packed, but we can unfold it together.
Yeah. So the first point is that ownership. It's that personal responsibility. And that
Mm,
was, if we go back to the discussion we had at the beginning around where are the problems in the world, well, personal responsibility is the opposite of the entitlement mentality. And personal responsibility is that first thing. It's like no, again, there's no one coming to save me. That's reality. So check in with that. That old saying, if it is to be, it is up to me. And all the experiences we have in the world, um, we need to own that. And so the first thing that I get to, well, what I did personally, and then what is important for people to do, is to realize that we can't change anything that's already happened, but we can change the story we tell about what happened. We can change the way we feel about what happened, and we can change what comes next. Because there's an element of people feel like they've got no control. And that's been, it's something that's happened a lot over the last few years. Oh no, this is all out of my control. There's nothing I can do right now. It's all predetermined and I have no power in this situation. But recognizing that every moment in every day we have the power to make decisions about what we think, feel, and do. So
mm,
reclaiming that power. And a big part of that is actually spending time with ourselves. And these days, it's never been easier to distract ourselves. It's like everyone will just pick up the phone or the Netflix or the news or food or sex or games or anything to avoid actually spending some time in silence,
mm.
alone, and just
Yes.
listen and feel. And that was a mistake that I made along my journey, is I didn't stop at given times to actually feel what was happening. And it was a couple of years ago I started writing my second book, which had evolved into a memoir. And when I started to go back, I started to realize I'm like, I was feeling things I didn't feel at the time. So
Wow.
it was really interesting. So now a big part of it in a moment is stop and feel something. Don't try and explain the feeling. Don't try and reason with it. Don't try and tell a story about the feeling. Just feel it for a bit.
Mm,
And so it's around have those feelings. Then when we've spent some time with those feelings, and we can assess the facts.
mm,
Then we can decide what we do now and what we do next.
mm.
And a big part of all of those things, and probably the simplest thing, it just comes down to gratitude.
Yes. Yes.
And for me, gratitude is not write down all the things you're grateful for every day. Like, it didn't work for me, that approach, which is
Neither
the
does
common.
it
I didn't
doesn't
like
work for
it.
me.
It feels like an obligation. It feels like a chore. It feels wanky. It feels wanky for me, right?
It's
And,
totally.
and so I use mantras. So first
Oh,
thing when my alarm goes off in the morning, as soon as I hit stop, it's like never snooze, always stop. And then I say thank you before I open my eyes. Thank you for the opportunity to be who I am, where I am, with what I have at this moment in time.
mm,
And I do
wow.
that before I go to sleep. I do that
Yeah.
at points during the day where I feel overwhelmed. Just gratitude, because gratitude brings you back in the present. If you're grateful, you can't feel two opposing emotions at the same time. So bringing it, like with the statement and mantra, bring yourself into the moment, use your breath, bring in the moment. And it's not possible to feel depressed, anxious, fearful, any of those things if you are truly present right in that moment.
Mm, mm. Wow, wow. I love that. And I totally align with you with that. The gratitude, not of the obligation of like, get the journal, the new journal of gratitude and gratitude time. No, no. It's an active, present moment declaration of what I am really feeling and grateful for, thankful for right now. Right. It's an embodiment process. So, Stacey, so one of the challenges we have right now in the world is, as you said, the youth. I really seeing that. I'm really seeing the muscle of resilience again, back to that word, so weak that because of social media. Because and now we have another one. Right now we have threads. I have a team. I have a girl, beautiful girl, Anna. So she opened my account on something threads, and it's like I cannot keep up. I don't know how they keep up, right? And, but it's challenging because, as you said, the attention is all over the place, and so nowadays, I truly believe that this is the time for meditation, that this is the time for slowing down, for stopping, for inquiring within to find out who you are. But how do you do it? Like besides, you just gave us a step by step guide, literally a step by step guide on how to really begin to access that resilience. But how do you come back or return? I mean, you did it, I did it. We've had very challenging, cathartic situations, but how do you help others come back that they don't even know what resilience is? How do you even introduce them to this world, to this, I hate to say the word medicine, but I'm going to say it, to this medicine that comes only from within you?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to explain concepts or things that where people don't really get is to relate it to something that they do understand. So
Mm.
the way I look at it is how I explain resilience to people is it's like going to the gym. So when we go to the gym to build and maintain physical strength, we're doing a series of simple movements repetitively over time with some resistance, some load. So if we're doing those movements, so you work out what muscle group you want to work and you do those things. You've got to do them consistently over time, and the compounding effect creates strength. So resilience, I see very, very similarly. You work out, and I've broken down in my book How to Be Resilient, is what are the principles of resilience. And then you work out, well, okay, well, what are those equivalent exercises of going to the gym to then build that resilient strength? And so there's simple practices, that rituals, I call them rituals for resilience, that people can do on a consistent basis. And when they do that over time, they build resilience. So I see resilience as proactive, whereas a lot of people see resilience as it's how do you cope, how do you react, how do you respond once something has
Uh,
gone wrong.
Sister, I love this, Stacy, because I see resilience being active. I think, this is the first time that I get that. I am a very resilient person, but I never thought about that little switch, that it immediately my body going like, actually, Yvonne, build more your muscle of resilience by moving, by acting, by training, by doing your Tai Chi, by actually meditating, but the repetition of the simple, to build that muscle that resilience is. But I honestly, I just had a wow live in the podcast. Resilience is an active thing, just like faith, just like anything that you really want to embody. It has to be a participation, not like tourism, like this Zen teacher says, maybe more. But wow! And so, would you recommend to the parents of children that are so lost and so depressed because of social media? There is not like I get to serve young people that are suffering because someone unfollowed them on social media, and for them it's real. Like they're feeling it, like that person betrayed them or rejected them, and because of how I am, I'm not a very patient person, so it takes a while. But how would you, how would you direct that? How would you do? Will you talk to the parents? Do you work with the organizations? What is the work that needs to be done so we can create a good pandemia of resilience in our schools, in our systems, in our children, in our parenting, in our world?
Yeah, it's been something that's come up over and over again, even prior to the last few years, because it's really been over the last 20 years that there's been this pendulum swing from, there was this whole approach to parenting where you need to build the kids' self-esteem, and that was the focus. And so we went from I'm Gen X, where our parents didn't tell us we did a good job. Okay, and there's some issues with that as well that I've spent a lot of my life dealing with, but there is that when you go the opposite way and you suddenly can't keep telling these kids, you're amazing, you do you're so good, you could do anything, you can be everything, you're amazing. but the bar for that praise is so low. So they are expecting it for everything. Oh, guess what? You cleaned your teeth this morning. Aren't you an amazing child? There's like this, that's when the bar for what is an achievement is so low. So, and every time I was speaking to corporate groups, every single time there would be people that would come up afterwards and go, how do I do this with my kids? And so it's been a big issue, but it's become more of an issue now. And you mentioned it, social media, the smartphone. The phone has been the single worst thing that has happened to young people. And parents are so worried about their children liking them rather than being a parent and a leader, because parenting is leadership.
Yes.
Parenting is around keep boundaries.
Wow.
Rather than trying to make your kid happy, focus on raising a capable
Yes.
young human that is able to contribute and interact and be and have a positive experience of the world and the realities of the world. So have boundaries with these phones. Don't allow them to have a smartphone and access to these social medias until they're much older. And when they do, have the courage and the leadership to put restrictions on that. Don't just
Yes.
allow them to sit there and scroll their phones until midnight every night when they're 13 years old. Like this is it's a recipe for disaster. So a big thing for parents is be present in your child's life rather than trying to give them every experience and give them every opportunity that you wish that you had. Don't fill their world with, oh my gosh, we're going to take you to swimming, we're going to take you to ballet, we're going to take you to dancing, we're going to take you to all of these different things. Work with your kids to find out what they actually are interested in, they're passionate in. Support them in that. Don't try and get them to do 20 things. Particularly with the younger children, allow them to get bored.
I love that.
Don't
That's so.
entertain them.
Every time my son says, Mom, I'm bored, I'm like, congratulations. What are you going to do with it? That's the moment for creativity, for wonder, for exploration, and for figuring it out. Even the mysterious. That's a very spiritual moment, and we are, as a society, some of us, we are weak and we are not capable or willing to say, to be in the discomfort of that moment, as you said. And actually, those are the greatest moments. I mean, you and I were raised with boredom. We were raised with, I don't even think I ever used that word. Did you ever use it?
We weren't allowed.
Right.
Bored was a swear word in our house.
Oh my gosh, I love, your parents and everyone may not talk, but I love your parents for doing that. I love that. My dad too, and so I think, what you just shared is not only for the kids, it's also for the adults. Because now the adults are glued and they're telling their kids, stop using their phone while they're in the phone too, and I'm guilty of that sometimes because now I have the excuse that I work through the phone. I'm
Yes.
talking to my clients. I'm doing my son. My son is like, okay, so he goes and well, he can do the same because I have it in very special schedule and times, but it's not a congruent thing. So, Stacey, tell us before we, because I'm talking so much with you. I want you to always, you're always welcome here, but talk to us a little bit about your books, and where can people find them? And again, we're going to put all the links of Stacey, everything. I really recommend parents, organizations, a lot of organizations follow us that, she speaks worldwide. You're a global speaker. And she works primarily with organizations, but reach out to her, get her books, and watch her speeches, because it's truly, as you could hear her, I really feel that David Goggins is right. You're a badass and also a queen of resilience. So tell us a little bit about your books before we say goodbye.
Yeah, well, the most exciting thing is I've been waiting to share with you is How to Be Resilient has just been translated into Spanish.
Oh, bravo! No, we have to bring you. We have a Spanish podcast. I couldn't even talk. We have a Spanish podcast. I can translate you. We have to bring you to talk about
Yes,
it.
so it's just been translated. So a dear friend of mine, she's from Peru, and she bought my book, she read it, and she's like, my 23-year-old nephew needs this. And then she said, is it available in Spanish? I said, no. she asked me, she goes, could I translate it for you? And she thought I would say no. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that would just be the greatest gift. So I've got like the electronic version. Now it's just like, and this is where I think maybe we could talk about this, is to go, well, what do we do with this? Because it's yeah. So that's one thing. I'm
I will
also in the process.
connect you with people for this because I think this is going to be such a blessing for Latin America.
Yeah, I've just started learning Spanish too. That's one thing that I've started learning. So that'd be a good exercise for me. And I'm also in the process of putting together a workshop for parents, an online workshop for how to raise resilient children. So
Amazing.
the timing on this is perfect. But yeah, if people want to reach out to me, LinkedIn or Instagram, but just my direct email that people want, if people want any questions, is helpmestacey@gmail.com. Helpmestacey, Stacey @gmail.com. And that's like my secret. That's the secret squirrel one.
I love that. Help me, Stacey at gmail.com. Wow, Stacey. Well, we're going to make sure to put your website, everything, all the links. Again, thank you for coming back to the podcast. And it's so lovely to be on video now. And thank you for your patience for that. And I'm sure we're going to have more journeys now that you are going to do this in Spanish. And I'm always eager to share content like this, valuable people and speakers and teachers like you, because you all are that wisdom. That's the piece of awakening, right, to Latin America. That's my heart is always in there, and I know your heart is on the resilience of mankind, of humanity, of the children, and of the future of our humanity. So, my beloved sister, thank you, Stacey, for coming. And anything else? Any little blessing that you would like to say to close?
I just think just coming back to not being afraid of being in the moment. And as you said, for children and for adults alike. And one particular thing I found very useful is when I do go to pick up my phone now, I ask myself, is there something I need to do, or am I just bored?
Wow. 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 Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm going to implement it and apply it for myself. Thank you so much. And that's such a great blessing. And for everyone else listening, thank you for following us. Remember that this is a philanthropic podcast. We don't put commercials or anything, just to keep clear the wisdom of our guests. And we're produced by Brilliant Futures Productions and sponsored by the Florida Teachers International. So follow us on Spotify, everywhere where podcasts are. Download us, send us your feedback, like us, and on YouTube. Now you can click the bell, do the like, subscribe. We're on YouTube as well. So thank you so much, everyone. We will see you next week. Y les mandamos un beso. Otra vez. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this new episode, and if you did, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere where you prefer to listen to your podcast. Make sure to check the links to everything we mentioned in this episode. For more news, future or past episodes, or for any other inquiry, please visit our website at delaflorteachings.com. Once again, thank you for listening to the Spirituality Now podcast.